Naomi Caldwell scanned the letter, her grip tightening with each word. A black entrepreneur, humiliated, turned away at her own Beverly Hills showroom. I believed in Caldwell Motors, but your staff made it clear. I don't belong. Her company, her name, her failure. She could fire them, issue a statement, but that wouldn't fix the problem. Naomi didn't believe in blind reactions. She believed in truth. So she made a decision. No press, no warnings. She was going in herself. Naomi Caldwell sat in silence, the letter resting on her desk like a verdict. The words burned, not just because they exposed a failure, but because they forced her to face a truth she hadn't wanted to consider. She had fought too hard for this. She still remembered the boardrooms that smelled of old money, the suits that barely masked their skepticism, the polite rejections that carried the same unspoken message: you don't belong here. The first time she applied for a loan, the banker had smiled, sympathetic, patronizing, as he slid the denial letter across the desk. Too ambitious, too risky, too much. That was the way the world saw her back then. And now? Now, she was the world they had once shut her out of. Caldwell Motors wasn't just a luxury brand. It was proof. Proof that a black woman could build something untouchable. Proof that exclusivity didn't have to mean exclusion. At least, that's what she had believed. David Williams's letter told a different story. A man who had admired her company walked into her showroom only to be told, through cold glances and dismissive tones, that he wasn't the right kind of customer. Her stomach twisted. Had she built an empire only to let it inherit the same disease she had spent a lifetime fighting? Naomi didn't believe in assumptions. She had built Caldwell Motors on action, on proof. She wouldn't rely on reports or secondhand accounts. She needed to see it for herself. Her decision was made. Across the city, in the pristine glass and marble showroom of Caldwell Motors Beverly Hills, Richard Langford leaned back in his chair, swirling a glass of scotch. The warning had come in a quiet, cautious phone call. Corporate was looking into complaints. He had barely listened. An investigation? Fine. They would find nothing. These complaints, always the same, always exaggerated. Some people walked into high-end spaces and expected to be treated like royalty. They didn't understand how exclusivity worked. David Williams? Just another nobody playing victim. Langford smirked, setting his drink down. Whatever corporate sent his way, he could handle it. Naomi Caldwell walked through the glass doors of Caldwell Motors Beverly Hills, the cool air inside contrasting with the California heat. She was dressed in a fitted black turtleneck, dark jeans and sneakers. Unassuming, intentional. No security detail, no assistants, no announcement. Just a woman in a showroom. She moved slowly, letting the space breathe around her. The polished floors gleamed under the showroom lights, reflecting the million-dollar cars that lined the room like art pieces. A Bugatti Chiron Supersport sat in the center, sleek, powerful, unattainable. Naomi approached the front desk, where Richard Langford stood, scanning the room with the casual arrogance of a man who believed he owned it. She stopped before him. "Excuse me," she said, keeping her voice light. "I'm interested in the Chiron Supersport." Langford's smile was polite but empty. His gaze flickered over her. Casual clothes, no designer bag, no jewelry screaming wealth. "I'm sorry," he said smoothly, "but that model isn't available for viewing." A clean, effortless dismissal. Naomi didn't flinch. "Oh?" she asked. "You're sure?" Langford's smile didn't waver. "Unfortunately, yes." Before she could respond, the showroom doors swung open, and a well-dressed white couple walked in. Langford's attention shifted instantly. Naomi stepped back, watching. The woman barely had to ask. Langford's demeanor transformed. Warm, engaged, welcoming. "Right this way," he said, personally guiding them toward the very car he had just told Naomi was unavailable. Her hands clenched at her sides. She scanned the showroom. Patterns emerged. A black man in a tailored suit stood near an Aston Martin, waiting for assistance. No one approached him. A Latino couple browsed near the Porsche display, glancing around uncertainly. No greeting, no offer of help. Meanwhile, a younger salesman hesitated, his eyes flickering toward Naomi, and then Langford. Maria Torres. The name on her badge was small, but Naomi noticed the way she shifted uncomfortably, how her hands hovered over the desk as if unsure whether to step in. An ally? Or just afraid? Naomi didn't react. Not yet. Instead, she reached into her pocket, discreetly starting a recording. She didn't just see it. She documented it, because confronting a problem wasn't enough. She was going to dismantle it. As she turned to leave, her anger didn't explode. It simmered. Not just at Richard Langford, but at the system that allowed him to exist. Naomi Caldwell didn't believe in assumptions. She believed in proof, and today, she was about to get it. Michael Reeves walked through the glass doors of Caldwell Motors Beverly Hills, exuding effortless confidence. His tailored navy suit, Rolex glinting under showroom lights, and casual swagger made him the perfect bait. Naomi watched from a discreet corner, dressed in the same casual outfit from her last visit. This time she wasn't here to ask questions. She was here to listen. Behind a sleek display counter, Daniel, her assistant, adjusted the hidden camera in his lapel. The feed was live, recording everything. Michael didn't even need to announce himself. Richard Langford spotted him within seconds, and his entire demeanor shifted. "Welcome to Caldwell Motors," Langford's voice carried across the room. Warm, inviting. His smirk, the same one that dismissed Naomi, was now a polished professional grin. Michael extended a hand. "Michael Reeves. I'm interested in the Bugatti Chiron Supersport." Langford beamed. "Of course, sir. A stunning choice. Let's get you set up." No hesitation, no scrutiny. Within moments, champagne appeared. A young server placed a crystal glass in Michael's hand, as Langford personally escorted him toward the Bugatti. The same Bugatti that, just yesterday, had been unavailable to Naomi. Michael played his part well. He ran a hand over the sleek curves of the car, nodding appreciatively. "Beautiful machine," he mused. Langford nodded eagerly. "Absolutely. And for a gentleman of your stature, we can arrange a private test drive." A test drive. Naomi's jaw tightened. No request for proof of financial standing. No hesitation. No excuses. Just instant, unquestioned access. Daniel's camera caught every moment. The easy rapport. The undeniable contrast in treatment. The footage was crystal clear. Langford's customer service wasn't about policy. It was about privilege. As Michael accepted the offer, Langford waved over a salesman. "Get the keys. Let's make sure Mr. Reeves gets the full experience." Naomi had seen enough. She turned to Daniel, her voice low but firm. "Send the footage to legal. And to PR. Because this wasn't just about Richard Langford. It was bigger than one showroom. This was the brand she built, and she was about to tear it down, brick by brick." Maria Torres stood stiffly behind the showroom counter. Fingers curled into her palm as Richard Langford's voice cut through the quiet tension of the employee lounge. "You need to be more efficient with your time," he said, his tone measured but sharp. "Luxury customers expect exclusive attention." Maria already knew what that meant. She had seen the pattern since the day she started at Caldwell Motors Beverly Hills. The unspoken rule, who to prioritize and who to ignore. She had tried to push back, subtly, spending extra time answering questions, being attentive to the customers who weren't offered champagne, weren't greeted with enthusiasm. But Richard had noticed. And now? She was being warned. She forced a nod, swallowing her frustration. "Understood." Richard's smirk was small but victorious. He straightened his suit. "Good. Let's keep things running smoothly." He left, and Maria exhaled shakily. She was trapped. Helping the wrong people too much meant risking her job. But following the rules meant ignoring what was right. That afternoon, Maria saw it happen again. A black couple walked in, excited, hopeful. The woman held a folder, clearly prepared to discuss financing options. Maria started to step forward, but before she could, Richard cut in. His voice was polite, but his posture was dismissive. The conversation ended before it could begin. "We're not offering test drives at the moment," he lied smoothly. "Our schedule is completely full." The couple exchanged a glance. The man's jaw tightened, but he nodded. They left. Not 2 minutes later, a white customer approached with the same request. Richard personally handed him the keys. Maria's stomach twisted. Her pulse pounded in her ears. The look on that couple's face lingered in her mind. That could have been her family once. It was the moment she knew. She couldn't ignore this anymore. That night, Maria sat in her car, hands shaking as she scrolled through her contacts. Her thumb hovered over Naomi Caldwell's number. This could cost her everything. But doing nothing? That was worse. She inhaled sharply, then pressed call. The line rang once, twice. Then, "Maria?" Naomi's voice was steady, expectant. Maria clenched her jaw. "I have something for you," she whispered. "Emails. Proof. I'll send them tonight." A pause. Then Naomi's voice, firm and resolute. "You're doing the right thing." Maria hoped she was right. But either way, There was no turning back. Richard Langford paced his office, his jaw tight, his mind racing. Naomi Caldwell had been in his showroom, not as the billionaire CEO of Caldwell Motors, but as a customer, watching, listening, recording. The realization sent a slow ripple of unease through him, but he crushed it quickly. He wasn't going down that easily. He grabbed his phone and dialed. Damage control started now. Within minutes, his orders were clear. "Wipe everything," he told his assistant, his voice clipped. "Emails, reports, complaints, all of it." "Sir, legal might—" "I don't care." He cut her off. "If there's nothing on record, there's nothing to investigate." He ended the call and sent another. Richard wasn't stupid. He knew how corporate wars worked. If Naomi wanted a fight, she'd get one. He called a contact in the media, someone who owed him a favor. "I've got a story for you," he said smoothly. "Caldwell Motors scandal?" the reporter asked, intrigued. "Not the one you think." He let the silence stretch before delivering the real angle. "Naomi Caldwell is using this as a power grab. She's manipulating this controversy to tighten her hold on the company." The journalist hesitated. "Do you have proof?" Richard smirked. "Trust me, I'll make sure you get what you need." The moment he hung up, he sent another call to his contacts in the boardroom. "She's making this personal," he warned them. "She's about to bring a PR nightmare down on us. The investors won't like this." A few board members murmured in agreement. Hesitation. Doubt. That's all he needed. Within 24 hours, the media flipped the script. The headlines weren't about discrimination at Caldwell Motors. They were about Naomi. CEO power struggle. Naomi Caldwell uses controversy to push out rivals. Caldwell Motors scandal or corporate takeover? Behind closed doors. Is this about racism or control? Investors started asking questions. The board grew restless. And Naomi? She watched it all unfold, jaw clenched, her phone buzzing with concerned calls. Richard was fast, but she was faster. She turned to Daniel, her assistant, her voice sharp with resolve. "We're going public. Everything." If Richard wanted a war, she would bring one to his doorstep. Naomi Caldwell stepped onto the stage, cameras flashing, microphones angled toward her. The weight of the moment pressed against her, but she didn't waver. She wasn't here to defend herself. She was here to show the truth. A large screen behind her flickered to life. The audience watched as the footage played. Naomi, dressed casually, standing in the showroom, asking about the Bugatti Chiron Supersport. Richard Langford's effortless dismissal. "That model isn't available." Minutes later, Michael Reeves, a wealthy white man, walks in, champagne in hand. Test drive offered. No questions asked. The room was silent. Then came the emails. Leaked messages from Richard Langford. "We need to be selective about who represents the Caldwell Motors image. Too much time wasted on customers who won't buy. You know who I mean. We are a premium brand. Keep it exclusive." Naomi turned back to the cameras. "This isn't one bad employee. This is systemic. A culture that has been allowed to thrive within my company." She let the weight of those words settle before delivering the final blow. "This ends today." The media exploded. Activists, civil rights groups, customers. The footage went viral in hours. Exposed, Caldwell Motors racial bias caught on camera. CEO Naomi Caldwell uncovers discrimination in her own company. Luxury car giant faces backlash, boycotts begin. Social media was ruthless. Customers canceled orders, dealerships faced calls for accountability, and hashtags demanding number justice at Caldwell trended worldwide. Richard Langford scrambled. He called his contacts, his PR team, his legal advisors. But the narrative had already slipped from his grip. He had played his hand too soon. And now, he was losing. Naomi's phone buzzed. A simple text from a board member. "Emergency meeting scheduled. Tomorrow. 9 a.m. She exhaled, steadying herself. This wasn't over. But now, they had to face her. And she was ready. Naomi Caldwell stepped into the boardroom, her heels clicking against the polished floor. A long mahogany table stretched before her, lined with executives. Some allies, some enemies, all watching. At the head of the table sat Richard Langford, exuding false confidence, fingers steepled. He smirked as she took her seat. "Let's begin," the chairman said. Richard leaned forward. "I'll make this simple," he began smoothly. "Naomi's reckless actions have severely damaged Caldwell Motors. This media circus, the boycotts, the lost revenue, that's on her." His gaze swept the room. "We built this brand on exclusivity. That's why we're successful. We curate our customers, and now she wants to throw that away." Some board members nodded, their hesitation visible. Naomi let the silence stretch before she spoke. "I expected you to say that, Richard," she said, sliding a folder onto the table. "So I brought facts." A screen flickered to life behind her. Customer complaints, ignored, dismissed. Declining market share in key demographics. Investor reports, concerned about Caldwell's image. "Exclusivity isn't our strength," Naomi said firmly. "Innovation is. And we're bleeding money because we've alienated an entire generation of buyers." Richard scoffed. "And you think making this a charity brand will save us?" Naomi didn't flinch. "Number. But making it a brand that doesn't turn away paying customers? That will." A heavy pause. Minds shifted. The chairman cleared his throat. "We've heard both sides. It's time to vote." The room tensed, hands raised. 11-4. In favor of Richard's termination. Richard's smirk vanished. "You can't be serious." Security entered. "This is a mistake," he seethed as they grabbed his arm. "You'll regret this." Naomi met his glare, unmoved. "No, Richard. We're correcting one." As he was led out, the weight of history shifted. Caldwell Motors had just changed. For good. Richard Langford's firing dominated the headlines. Caldwell Motors ousts executive over discrimination scandal. Naomi Caldwell cleans house. And the industry feels it. Luxury car brands face scrutiny after Caldwell Motors shakeup. But Naomi wasn't finished. At a press conference the next morning, she stood before a packed room of reporters. Cameras flashed, pens scratched against notepads, the world waiting for her next move. She didn't make them wait long. "We are implementing sweeping changes, effective immediately," she declared. "Mandatory anti-discrimination training across every showroom and corporate office. New leadership appointments in high-profile locations. An independent oversight committee to ensure fairness in customer interactions." Her voice was steady, unapologetic. Caldwell Motors was built to stand for something greater than exclusivity. And from now on, we will. The announcement sent shockwaves through the industry. Competitors scrambled to respond. Aston Martin, Bentley, and Rolls-Royce pledge internal policy reviews. Ferrari announces customer equity initiative following Caldwell Motors scandal. For decades, the luxury auto world had thrived on quiet bias, an unspoken understanding of who belonged and who didn't. Naomi had shattered that silence. The pressure mounted. Shareholders demanded diversity reports. Customers threatened boycotts against brands that refused to adapt. Lawsuits were revisited, policies questioned. This wasn't just Caldwell Motors' reckoning. It was the industry's. A week later, Naomi stood in her office, scrolling through an email inbox flooded with messages. Black entrepreneurs thanking her for opening doors. Former dealership employees sharing their own experiences. Customers pledging loyalty, not just to her cars, but to her cause. Daniel entered, holding up a tablet. "You should see this," he said. On screen was a viral hashtag, #drive change. Thousands of people were sharing their own stories. Of rejection, of being dismissed, of stepping into showrooms and knowing they weren't wanted. Naomi exhaled. She had set out to fix her company. Instead, she had ignited something bigger. Maria Torres stood outside her new office, her hands gripping the edges of a neatly labeled nameplate. Maria Torres, Director of Ethics and Training, Caldwell Motors. The title felt unreal. Just weeks ago, she had been another junior employee, too afraid to speak up, too afraid to lose everything. Now, she was here. Not as a bystander, not as a spectator, but as the one leading the change. She took a steady breath and stepped inside. The office was larger than she expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. A polished oak desk sat in the center, and a stack of folders marked policy reform waited for her attention. Maria exhaled, running a hand over the desk's surface. This wasn't just a new job. This was a responsibility. She had spent years watching discrimination happen in small, calculated ways. A delayed greeting, an ignored customer, a well-timed excuse to deny access. It was never loud, never obvious, but it was always there. And now, she had the power to stop it. A knock at the door made her turn. Naomi Caldwell stood in the doorway, arms crossed, a knowing smile on her face. "How does it feel?" Naomi asked. Maria hesitated before answering. "Big," she admitted. "But necessary." Naomi nodded. "Real change always is." She stepped inside, placing a file on Maria's desk. "This is your first initiative. Bias training for every employee, mandatory across all showrooms." Maria took the folder, flipping through the pages. Policies, case studies, a plan to rebuild the system from the inside out. She looked back at Naomi. This isn't just about Richard, is it? Naomi shook her head. Taking him down was just the beginning. Making sure no one replaces him. That's the real fight. As Naomi left, Maria sat down, her fear replaced by determination. Speaking up had been terrifying. Risking her job had felt like walking blindfolded toward a cliff. But if she hadn't, Richard would still be there. The showroom would still operate under the same unspoken rules, and nothing would have changed. She wasn't just here to enforce policies. She was here to make sure no one else felt what she had. Maria reached for her phone and opened a new email. Subject: Training Initiative Rollout. She didn't hesitate. She hit send. Change had already begun. Months had passed, but the transformation was undeniable. The Beverly Hills showroom, once a silent fortress of exclusivity, now stood as a beacon of change. Customers of all backgrounds stepped through its glass doors, not with hesitation, but with confidence. There were no more subtle glances, no quiet dismissals, no Richard Langford. The staff moved with purpose, trained to serve every customer with the same respect, the same energy. Not because they were being watched, but because the culture had changed. Maria Torres, now overseeing ethics and training, walked the floor, making sure no one forgot what had been fought for. Change wasn't a one-time event. It was a constant commitment. Sales hadn't suffered. If anything, Caldwell Motors was thriving. Market share had rebounded. Customers who once felt unwelcome were now loyal buyers. Investors, once hesitant, were back on board. The numbers proved what Naomi already knew. Exclusivity had never been the key to success. Access had. Naomi stood on the balcony of her corporate office, overlooking the city skyline. She had won this battle. But the fight? It would never be over. There would always be another barrier to break, another industry to challenge. But for now, she allowed herself this moment. She smiled. Caldwell Motors wasn't just selling cars anymore. It was leading a revolution.